up, we have a full-length Gaia TV interview with Regina Meredith interviewing Julia Cannon. Julia shares candidly about Dolores Cannon's final days, the legacy that she left behind. You're not going to want to miss this one.
As many of you know, the great Dolores Cannon passed away last year in 2014, but her work lives on. By her side for many years was her daughter Julia Cannon, who assisted Dolores with all of her lectures and trainings. When Dolores suddenly departed, Julia was also left to finish publishing some of Dolores's unpublished and unfinished works. She's here with us today to speak about her mother and one of her last books, Hidden Sacred Knowledge. And there will be more books beyond that. We still have Convoluted Universe 5, and we'll talk about all that in a bit. But welcome, and this is a big deal for you.
Yes, it is.
You're stepping into your mother's, well, you know what? I started to say you're stepping into your mother's shoes. You're not. You have your own shoes.
Yes, and that is my conundrum, is I'm stepping in her shoes, but I am in my shoes, and that's kind of my where do I go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about. I want to talk about the circumstances, because everyone was surprised.
Yes.
You know, when they heard about it, it's like, oh my God, a lot of people around the world were very surprised. But before we get to that, I want to ask you one thing. You and your mom worked really well together. I met you two together years ago. How do you describe the skill sets each of you bring to the table?
We were a great team. You're going to make me cry.
It's okay if you cry a little bit. That's okay. We love your mother.
I'm still dealing with...
It's only a few months.
Yes. And I'm...
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
I know. I know.
Because you're saying, yes, it was a surprise. It was a surprise to me, too. I really didn't expect it. She had me convinced she was going to live forever.
I thought my mom died young. I thought she was going to live to be at least 100. I mean, it happens.
I really thought that was her plan.
When she was such a strong woman.
I did. I thought she was, yes, that was her plan. She kept saying, I'm going to be riding into my 90s, and I'm going to be, she had me convinced.
Yeah, and she was slowing down a bit.
Yes.
But she still had a lot of energy. You guys had a massive new project you were starting. So for the sake of the viewers that loved her, what actually happened toward the end?
Right. What actually happened, she fell and she hit her head, and she was going to the beauty shop.
Your mom had a thing about her hair. Let's just talk about that for a moment.
Yes.
Your mom would get really edgy if she didn't have her hair exactly the way she wanted it. I remember that.
Well, and she was working up to the last. We had just finished a class, one of her classes, and then she was going to the beauty shop. So this is work as normal, her normal routine.
Yeah.
She was on her own. So she'd gone in there. We don't really know what happened. We don't know if she slipped. We don't know what happened. She just fell. Something happened, and she fell and hit her head. Now, that isn't what actually did. I mean, she had some concussions from that, but she actually healed from those. Okay. And I was calling on all the healers around the world, and she actually healed from those. But it was something to do with the hospital stay. Actually, it was like I think what it was, and this is what had to happen to convince me that it was her time and it was her decision. Because, like I said, I was calling on all the healers and everything, that things were happening piecemeal, and one at a time. And all those were getting healed as I was requesting help. And then at the last minute, all of a sudden, just everything just shut down. The whole body went at once. And that's when I finally just had to say, okay, I guess it's time. I guess you're wanting to go. And I think during that other time, she would sleep a lot. And I think she was counseling and conferring and
going back and forth between dimensions and with other realms and such.
Right, and a lot of people were telling me that they were, seeing what she was doing.
She was reaching out to them, and they were tapping into her. And she's a very powerful being, and she had quite a reach.
Yes, exactly, and that she was deciding that she could do more from the other side, that it was time.
And those are the messages that were coming to you?
To me, yes. That there was just much more that she could do. She was just at a pivotal point. It's like, do I stay and keep doing what I'm doing? It was like it was just, she could do so much more if she would just go.
Well,
So,
and she would not be limited energetically by a
Right.
body that is going through what we all go
Right.
through, the aging process.
absolutely, and we had just gotten to the point where her body was saying, I have to stop traveling so much. And we had just done, I had just gone on a trip where we had decided that she shouldn't go on it, and it was the first one where I had done it, and we were doing her by Skype.
Oh.
And she actually got depressed. And she's like, I should be there with you doing it.
Yeah, that's her
And-
thing. But look at how beautiful that is, though. She pushed the little chick out of the nest before this happened.
right.
And that sounds like that was pretty critical
It was.
for you
but-
to have to step into that, even though it was, she didn't give you a lot of training,
No.
in terms of time to adapt to your new role. It's not like you'd been doing it for a year or two. You just
Right.
stepped into
I
it.
stepped into it, and okay, we saw we could do it. And it's like, okay, this works. We've got a new platform here. Okay, we can do it. And then, okay, she goes. And it's like, hey, hello.
Now you can, and now you have to do it.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so back to that question at the beginning. What do you, if you were to describe your skill sets and your mom's skill sets that made you work so complementarily together?
She's a researcher, investigator. She was always asking the questions. Her skill sets.
Well,
She
we
was
know that
the-
she had
yes.
such an amazing curiosity.
Curiosity was her middle name.
And
she was
she had a kind of innocence about her.
wide-eyed innocence.
Wide-eyed.
Wide-eyed. It's almost like the older she got, the younger she got. In fact, I was often accusing her. I was like, look, I know you've been on this planet for 83 years. I know you know these things. I mean, it's almost like she was becoming more and more innocent the older she got. She just,
But it's as though the work she did required that innocence.
Absolutely.
Because if you come jaded to
Yes.
her job, you're not going to ask the same questions, you're not going to give the same respect and credibility to the
Yes.
people that you're dealing with.
Right.
And thank goodness she did, because over the course of how many thousands of these did she do?
oh my goodness, it's countless.
Countless thousands and
Countless.
thousands of regressions.
Yes.
What happened is, because of that kind of wide eye, really, well, then what happened? She started seeing themes, big themes emerging over time.
And because of that, that's why she would see the miracles happen all the time. Miracles in her office, things that,
Give us an example, a couple
Oh.
of your favorite miracles.
oh my goodness. Well, she was always seeing cancer
Disappear,
eradicate,
yeah.
constantly, just
Yeah.
disappear. People who come in crippled, get up, leave their crutches, walk out.
Yeah.
People who can't breathe, on breathing machines, leave, never have breathing. They're running around the office, back problems, doing backflips. It's because she totally believed.
She did. She made them feel safe
Yes.
to go through what ends up being an extremely cathartic process when you go through regressions.
Yes.
And so through that, boom, whatever the triggers were energetically left the body.
Yes.
It's amazing. Okay, so now you tell us what your piece of that was, because you were a team.
We were a team. I think what I brought structure. I brought humor. I kind of kept her in line.
Yeah.
I somehow we made a comedy duo. Is all I can. I'm not really sure. I kept feeling like some days I wasn't sure what I brought, but somehow we just made a comedy duo here, and we just complemented each other.
And in the midst of all of this, you were absorbing all and witnessing all of this. So you absorbed a tremendous amount of knowledge, and then you started seeing patterns too.
I started seeing patterns as well as developing my own abilities. It was just absorbing, and it was just a wonderful environment to grow and be nurtured in, I guess.
And the classes and the courses and such, those go on.
Absolutely.
I mean, with or without Dolores, those are what is being offered so that other people can help assist others in bringing their subconscious information forward.
We, 2002, I believe it was, she started teaching. She got guidance to start teaching her method because she was told long ago, there's only one of you. And more people need these sessions. Only, you can't do all the people that need these sessions. And so you need to teach. And so she started teaching this. And we've been teaching all these years. And they've been growing in popularity. And then about a year and a half ago, we got, well, longer than that, we got the guidance to start putting them online. So we started recording the classes and we started creating the platform. And then about a year and a half ago, we started them online.
And thank God you understand structure, so
yes.
you can allow this to actually come to fruition.
Yes, absolutely. So that's where, because I do hear them, and that was my guidance, was record these, get this in place, do it now. They kept going, do it now, do it now, do it now. Now I understand the urgency.
Yes.
I didn't know then what was so urgent.
But you listened.
I did listen.
So amidst all of this, I mean, your mother has to still be coming through to you and others.
She's coming through to others. I've had a few dreams, so she's coming through a little bit to me. She's definitely coming through to the practitioners. She's coming through in sessions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because that's her thing.
Oh,
Mama's not going to let go of those sessions.
Oh, no. And it's so wonderful, though. She's coming through. There are people that never even met her, never knew her before, and she's coming. Oh, it's just so beautiful, the stories they're telling. It's just
give
wonderful.
us a story or two of her coming through.
Oh, she's just coming through, and maybe they're having a hard time, and they don't know what to do. They're just stuck. Oh, what do I ask here? The practitioner.
The practitioner,
and then she's coming in to them, just energetically or whatever, and she just comes to them.
And tells them what to do.
What to do, absolutely. Or she'll come through the client sometimes and just tells them what to do. And they just know it by her voice, her mannerisms. And we can confirm, yes, that's her. That's how she acts.
Yeah, your mom was very distinct in her patterns of communication. And that makes sense where she said, I can do more from the other side.
Yes.
Because if this regression, and I would say it doesn't hurt anybody to do regression work, whether it's just going back a couple years to a traumatic event or with your family, or whether it's to go back into other lifetimes, other universes, as some of what we're going to talk about today. There is something about the process of regression that seems to bring up from the subconscious whatever it is you need to look at in that moment, not necessarily what you came for. This was a big surprise to your mom all those years back.
Right,
People come in saying, I need to lose weight, and boom, they're in Lemuria.
Right.
What is Lemuria? I have no idea. Where is this place?
Right, well, that's how it started.
Yeah.
In the 60s, that's how it all began with her and my father. Those were the beginning hypnotists. It was beginning with lose weight and maybe anxiety.
Smoking.
They stopped smoking, absolutely. And then spontaneously went into a past life. But as she's progressed, what the guidance has been is just with the subconscious, using that broader part of ourselves. She just called it the subconscious because she didn't know what else to call it, but it's really our higher self, universal consciousness, oversoul, whatever it is we want to call that larger part of ourselves. It just guides us to what we need to know.
Exactly. I mean, I'll talk about it later when we get to that part, but I had a regression by your mom. I went in for one thing, thinking it's modern history, and I ended up way back in a huge event that was very traumatic. And I think this is how it worked for most people.
Right.
But then there were people along the way that your mom would work with because they were so lucid. When she realized, oh boy, this person's really bringing stuff through. And she had certain people like that, not just random people that were giving information.
Well, or they went to a certain point.
Yes.
They had, like someone that was a student of Nostradamus, and that was an assignment.
I remember that story.
That was
have
specific.
All those books.
Yes, that was a very specific assignment. That was very early on in her work,
and for people that don't know about that, your mom was doing her normal hypnosis, and when someone said, "There's a guy here. He's dressed from times past called Notre Dame, and all this, trying to figure it out." And they finally figured out who this person was, and he said, "They have not adequately interpreted the quatrains I left behind."
Yes.
So you're doing it.
Yes, I have an assignment for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was absolutely fascinating. Very interesting reading those quatrains as well. Yeah, speaking of which, have you read those recently at all?
Not recently.
Yeah, so I'm not going to question you on that because there are a couple things kind of surrounding this period of time.
Right. The biggest thing about that, she and I will address that.
Okay.
She kind of, what it looks like is it looks like, and what I got etherically in a vision, is that we went on a different timeline. So we actually did change the course.
You need to say more about that.
Okay. Because that's what they said. That's what he said. If I show you the worst thing that can happen, the worst thing that man can do, will you do something to change it? That was all he was trying to accomplish. That was why he wanted her to do this. And by showing, then we changed the course. Mission accomplished.
And okay, so now, when did you get that confirmation that the course was changed?
About 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. Now that's fascinating. And you know what's interesting? The beings that I deal with and have for 30 years, my guides, so to speak, had told us once upon a time, quite a long time back, I was asking about the earth changes and Edgar Casey's prophecies. And they said, what Casey said, some of this will come to pass, but some of it will not come to pass. And I said, well, what changes? And they said, as the consciousness of the people on the planet begins growing, it will change what happens, trying to explain. You're emotionally interwoven with the earth, even though we didn't understand what that meant 30 years ago. And they said, as you change consciousness, and massive numbers of people do, especially in pockets, those events will be changed. So
and I just got all the confirmation chills all over my body.
Yes.
So, yes.
Amazing. So so what do you perceive? What did you perceive when you heard that in terms of what kind of events might be avoided now? I know you can't be too specific because we don't know for sure.
Right. But like the major world wars, the majors, like we'll have the smaller wars.
Yes.
But those major,
those catastrophic, globally catastrophic events.
Right. Those were all being avoided.
What about things having to do with natural cataclysms and such that were
Well, those, what I still see is those are related to our emotions. And as we start
like
realizing,
those other beings said.
as we start realizing that we are tied to them, then we will start affecting them.
Yes.
So,
well, and that's the new work, Heart Math, and Howard Martin. They're doing.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, that's very exciting. If we can go into a state of peace, you know, all the finer things, just a little peace and compassion, that then resonates with the Earth's own emotional field, that very delicate matrix.
Absolutely, and that's all part of the shift of consciousness. So
yes. Well, anyway, I'm glad I did ask that spontaneously, and thank you for sharing that, because I haven't seen your mom in the last, it's probably been 5 years. So I didn't know you'd gotten that confirmation. Wow. Okay. So now let's talk about some of what she left you. What was happening when your mom left?
Right.
You had a pile there to deal with. What did she leave you with, and what did you start prioritizing?
Well, she had this book, The Search for Hidden Sacred Knowledge. That book was pretty much done. She was almost finished with it. And she was like, okay, that book, she was like on the final read through, she was pretty much done with it. It's like, okay, so we'll finish it.
Makes sense. Done.
Right, let's just go ahead and do it. And then she had the Convoluted Universe, Book 5. She was working on those two pretty much at the same time. So that one was like right behind it. And so then I'm working on that one now. It'll be out probably by summer.
So does that particular one have any kind of theme to it?
The closest I can come to it, because that's what this woman.
Your mother.
Yes, this one. You know, I'm really learning to have a whole different respect for her. One, and how she put her material together. I mean, she was definitely a master. She was a master in so many things I did know, and I knew how she wrote her books, and I helped her write, put them together. But even this part, I mean, it's I see where it is, but then where it is, it's like even how she did it. I'm still going, how did you do it?
Well, you need to hook up with her. Get someone to hook up with her.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm going to do that, and I'm still talking to her. So yes, to get the theme, because one thing I'm seeing for sure is energy. It has to do with expanded energy. I can see that. So there's something, and that makes sense, because if you look at the Convoluted Universe series, it's like each one, you know, they're all about mind-bending concepts.
Right.
Each one is a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Okay, we want to bend the mind a little bit more. A little bit more on the metaphysical concepts. Okay. And then also about showing us a little bit more about who we are. So that's what it's moving toward. You know,
That's
it's like,
good.
okay, we're just a little bit bigger.
Right, than we think we are.
Exactly. Each one keeps showing a little bit more of who we are. So that's, I'll give you that peek.
Okay, that's good. Now, the book we're talking about today is the last one she was working on, and let's go into that. And it's a series of regressions that are really dedicated to bringing forward people's regression experiences of hidden knowledge, and which is interesting, because as I read it, I saw, you know, also some themes popping up in it. And so why don't we start out, the first of them was, and you can tell me, your mom, okay, so one thing your mom talked about is the world sacred structures, because these structures are featured in this book. And she learned over the course of these thousands and thousands of regressions that there was help building these structures. This was nothing by primitive people. Our audience is totally on board with that and understands whether it was master beings, adepts of some kind that were here and embodied physically and taught the human species how to use certain technologies, or whether they did them with their own themselves. We won't argue that point. I mean, because that's still being revealed.
Right.
But there were a lot of people on Earth who knew of, were aware of, who witnessed, who worked alongside, and who were those beings.
Right.
And so in the beginning of the book, one thing that, you know, came up, Isis, the theme of Isis in general, had kind of come up repeatedly through the book about this being an embodied person, not a mythological character. Just hear a little bit about that.
Well, and in general, what we're seeing are gods and goddesses, in general, were beings from other planets. They are from the stars, and they are beings that were here they came here, and then they were here to teach the humans how to learn to be. Okay, and then they were treated as gods and goddesses just because they were not from this plane. And so Isis would have been just another one of them. But yeah, she is featured heavily in this book. Probably the time element, but maybe just one.
I wonder about that too, about why that message, why Isis now? Why is that theme emerging?
Well, and I think in the story that was brought up is that she was now, and then she's coming back, as I said, in the end times, but it's also, and then they described the end times as being
explain the end times.
Well, they said the end times, not being that it was the end of times, but it was the change of consciousness again. So that being the end of that way of thinking. So I like that is the way that they're describing it, because that's another theme that was in Nostradamus.
Yes.
Again, they kept talking about the end times, and that was always an issue I had with the Nostradamus books. Was the end times. I didn't like that negativity. But when you read the Nostradamus books, they're actually books of hope.
Right.
And so I had never seen this description of the end times.
Interesting.
And
associated with Isis, what is that end time scenario like?
Well, that's what they were saying. I mean, she's the sun goddess, and then here it's the end of, it's a change of consciousness. So here it's like the representation of new consciousness.
So were they saying that Isis would be coming back in physical form?
That's what's
as
implying.
As
a human being, yes.
That's what it looked like when I was reading it as well. And again, we have to remember that when people are in regression, it's not like you become brilliant or a superhero. You know only what you knew in that day.
Yes.
And there can be confusion, as I'll explain later on. There can be confusion. You may have misunderstandings at that time. You pass it on. It's not gospel. It's your perception of what was going on in the time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the strength in numbers comes in, because she did so many of them, you start hearing these same themes, like about Isis. That Isis, and the way they described the awe people felt for Isis when they could have a glimpse of her even, that this was a very beautiful, very powerful,
Right.
regal being.
I thought it was interesting. They said that people would come from all over the galaxies to come and learn from her.
Yes.
But if they were not of the right frequency,
Yes.
that all they would see was a statue.
Yes,
Isn't that
that
interesting?
is so fascinating. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about with eyes to see in that, because it had to do also with dwellings, temples.
Yes.
So talk about what was revealed during these, not channelings, but during these regressions.
Well, I mean, that's happening all the time. Actually, that even is happening now. They say that will happen within like pyramids and things like that all the time. If you are of the right, I keep wishing I could go into a pyramid and be of the right frequency, and then everything will start opening up. Because they say that's what actually will happen.
Yes.
That's what they're looking for, is the right, the Sphinx will open and everything will happen if
That's
you're the
supposed to happen supposedly in our lifetime,
Yes.
that underneath one of the paws will be
Right.
revealed the contents, which affects our future greatly. But
Right.
it hasn't been released yet.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because we don't have eyes to see yet.
Right. Yeah, it's when we're ready.
And-
Exactly.
And so it wasn't just that Isis was a statue, it's that they wouldn't even see a temple that they had made a
wouldn't see
pilgrimage
anything.
to.
There wasn't anything there. Yes, it was just, there was nothing there. It was just, there was no home. It was just nothing. They did not have the eyes to
It
see
would
it.
be ruin.
Exactly.
Like just literally a ruin of some
A ruin of
kind.
something, exactly. The same as we go, it's probably exactly what we see when we go see ruins. There's probably actually a beautiful city there, and we see nothing.
Yeah, that's
So-
both depressing and awe-inspiring.
Exactly. You're like,
you know?
ugh.
Yeah, and the work of James the Wingmaker. I did a brief a radio interview a while back with his right-hand person, Mark. And in the stories he writes, which are thinly disguised fiction, they talk about how places around the planet, including modern structures, that for whatever reason, whoever occupies them do not want these to be seen, are using modern-day cloaking technologies, actual technology that can cloak the appearance of facilities, for example, to look like it just kind of blends in with the mountainside. And in fact, I recently interviewed Jerry Wills, and he went through this experience as a child. They'd go through the swamplands in Florida and come up to what just looked like more trees, and then it's like this thing parted and there was a whole room in there he'd go behind. So this is something that's being validated throughout.
Okay.
So Isis was there for those, and what was the nature, what were they gaining from her if they had access to her?
Well, it would have been these teachings. It was just
The great cosmic teachings,
Right.
depending on what any individual needed to learn.
right. Just, yeah, and they said and they came here. It was the beauty and the love and the teachings from here.
And what was it, now another thing that would come up was the notion of Earth.
Yes.
Let's talk about that and what she discovered through the years about Earth, the uniqueness of Earth.
Earth was always very unique. It was this beautiful planet. It originally was the vacation planet because it was so beautiful, and beings came here to vacation. And then they started coming here and then kind of got stuck here.
Yeah, this is a story I'm very interested in and in my own way involved with. And they all the stories merge at this one point. Initially, benign experience was happening here. Edgar Cayce, same thing. Benign experience for pleasure, for enjoyment, for curiosity. Scientific discovery was occurring. And then came a period where some kind of density process occurred.
Right.
And the beings started finding they really weren't able to traverse out of here.
Right.
And that's what emerged out of her work as well.
Yes.
Now, some of the people that come through, and I have many different people here. Okay, let's talk about Rachel. She had a very wealthy, very powerful existence, and that's under the chapter They Thought We Were Gods.
Right.
Let's talk about her and others like her.
Right, others like her. That's where they were coming from a lineage of, they were hybrids. They were coming from a lineage of actually bloodlines from the aliens, from the ETs. And the reason they thought they were gods is because they were able to leave the earth plane. And they really weren't, wasn't that they were that different, it was just because they could leave the earth plane.
They still had certain abilities intact.
Yeah, some. But it was being diluted out as they kept interbreeding with the humans. And I thought was interesting, in her case, her ability was she could tell when people were lying. And I thought, you know,
yeah, that's a useful
it's very
skill.
useful, and many of us have that. It's like,
Yes.
you know, we have that now, and we don't think a lot of it, but it's like, that's, so many of these things we think, oh, if we only had that. We have those. We have those abilities now.
But we don't listen to them. We allow other third-party things to tell us what's correct. And so that was hers, where she had the ability to just look at a person and see lie, truth, lie. And there was a certain kind of, you know, wonderment that people thought she was a god of some kind. And this wasn't uncommon for some of them. And would you say, what would you say were the instances? Was it a relatively common instance for people to say they were hybrid beings? They had been hybrid beings?
In these sessions, fairly common. Not very common, but fairly common. It would go back and forth. I mean, I would say more common lately. Earlier, most of the sessions were what Mom would describe as the digging potatoes lives. You know, the normal, you know, regular past lives and everything, because that's what people needed.
Right.
They needed to go back, and they would get one little piece of information. That's what they needed to understand. But more recently, and not saying that that's where everybody's coming from or what's going on, I think this is where the information lies now for everybody. I think this is just who we are and where it's coming from now. And it might be that, you know, I mean, this is where humans come from. So why not that be our information? Right. It's just, now it's time for us to know our lineage.
Yes. So, and in that lineage, there's another component to this. And you said at the time you didn't really understand what they were talking about, and that is the instance of people who are perceived more machine-like.
Yes.
Without a normal sense of or emotions, maybe without conscience.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about?
Or it was a soul, and seeing that, it was like that. I have a problem with. I don't know how to process that yet. When they say they don't have a soul, I don't know how to process that.
So
yet.
that's one perception of that kind of being. Often, as it was described, these are people. They're people, or look like people anyway, that don't necessarily have much happening in the eyes.
Right.
Can you expand on that?
Right, it was just that they said they're just very dark, they're just very, that's how you can tell that they were the machine people. They were just, like, they're very dead. There's just no soul.
And yet at the same time, they had technological information, advanced information technologically.
Right.
And so how were they interfacing with people of that day?
They were...
Because there was fear around them.
A lot of fear, but I think it was basically from that perception, because even now, if we were to meet people that
don't appear to have empathy or compassion and no light happening.
Right, because that's how we relate,
right.
You know, on emotions. And so if we come up with someone that doesn't have emotions, we're going to be afraid of them. So there'd be a lot of fear around them. But I believe they were here to learn how to relate. That was what they were here for.
They wanted to have the human experience. Another one was this one. This, I love this, and I want to go to, this was about the right and left side of the body, because that's a phenomenon we can all relate to. And then I'd like to move on to the story of those who were healers of old, and this is a big topic. Okay, so she said common denominators among hypnotized beings is that things that happen on the right side of the body, that was the present, the left side was the past.
Yes.
So tell me your experience of this.
And that's how you deal with, you know, anything, your aches and pains and illnesses, anything like that. That's how you know where it's coming from. That's one way of it telling you.
And was that consistent throughout?
Absolutely, absolutely. If it's on the right side of the body, it means it's now. It's something that's going on in your life now. Left side of the body, it means it's from the past, the childhood, or from another life. So that gives you an idea.
That's very useful information.
Very useful.
To see, God, why does all this stuff keep happening to my left side, for example, right?
Absolutely.
And so there she would start digging around, and once they were to the point they needed to be in the regression, say if it came from the past or whatnot, once that was addressed and felt and released, they would experience relief from symptoms. And as you said in the beginning, this was happening all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. And so how, on the right side, that means just analyze what's going on in our lives right now,
Yes.
what might be bothering us that we haven't really taken time to look at.
Right. Yeah. It's just saying, hey, look at me. Hello. I'm right here. That's what it's, yes.
And what did she find throughout these thousands of regressions when it comes to pain and suffering in the human body?
Well, those are just messages. They're just messages saying, this is one way that the body can communicate to you, messages from your higher self, from your oversoul, that to pay attention to. That this is something to pay attention to, that you can fix. It's just something that you need to do. Okay? So, because so many of the times we don't listen to them directly. Well, you can, but we don't.
No.
So the body is to me, it's the path of last resort. Because there's so many other ways we can get the messages.
More subtle than before it becomes physical.
Exactly. But, yeah, because we can get messages, we get signs all the time. I mean, they can talk to us directly.
Right.
We can get, somebody can walk up to us and say something to us. That's
It's
another
amazing
way.
the myriad of ways that the universe can speak with you.
Absolutely. So to me, the body, I mean, that's just one more way.
That's when you haven't been listening.
Exactly. So that's, to me, is the last resort. So that's just one more way. That's the last way. And then that's just
So
what
let's talk about the instance of cancer, because that's like really getting toward the, we've been trying to get your attention for a long time. And so let's talk about just in general, what was some of the phenomena around cancer that came up repeatedly?
Right. Cancer is anger. It's suppressed anger. Anger that has been going on for a very long time.
And this came out through
repeatedly.
Virtually everyone that.
Yes.
Okay.
It's suppressed anger, and where it is in the body tells you what they're angry about. Okay, so the body part is telling you what it's all about.
So, for example, would you go to like Louise Hay's original work or something to find out what's this part of the body mean?
Or you could go to my book, Soul Speak the Language of Your Body.
Or you go to your books. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then find out which part of your body is trying to tell you what kind of message about anger in your life.
Yes. Because the body parts, they're very literal. It is so beautiful how it uses the body, and those body parts are very literal in how they communicate. You know, the breasts are about nurturing.
Yeah.
The cervix is about creation. You know, those are common parts that the cancer goes to.
Yes.
The gut is about emotions. You know, it's where we hold our emotions. I'm just thinking as far as cancer, the throat, we speak.
Yeah.
You know, we express ourselves. We have something to say. We're not saying it. You know?
Yeah.
So those are. So it's like wherever wherever that is, that's what you're angry about. And if they would just speak, but usually they are just holding it inside, and they're like, "It's not my problem. You're the one with the problem," and they just won't speak about it.
So there's a lot of repressed stuff in general.
Major.
That's turning into repressed anger.
Exactly, and it's gone on for a long time, and it's just been sitting in there churning and churning and churning and churning and churning and churning, whining on itself and eating now on itself, and now it's cancer.
Yeah. But as you said, that can be undone.
Absolutely.
Release the emotional trauma.
Yes, because once that's understood, now in a session, it's done like that. It's immediate, because in a regression, you're able to make immediate contact to your bigger self.
Yes.
And you can bring in the healing light. It's all done with white light, and the understanding and the emotional release happens immediately. And you have the understanding, and you're able to release. So it's all immediate. But you can do it consciously as well.
Right.
But like you said, you have releasing, you have talking. You got to
talk. You got to dig
start
down.
doing this.
You got to dig down into it. You can't
have work
avoid it
to do.
anymore.
Absolutely. If you want to get rid of this, you have work to do.
Well, and so kind of the classic way in New Age parlance, so to speak, is, oh, everything is fine, and my cells are healing, and all that, and it's really groovy. And your mom found that wasn't true. You got to get into the source.
You got to get in there. Absolutely. There's something. What is it you're angry about? Get in there and get it out. Go ahead and get it.
Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah.
It's okay to be angry. I think that's one of our things is we've been taught that anger is not okay.
That is true.
We've been taught that emotion is not acceptable. And that emotion is fine. It's an emotion, and it's an acceptable emotion. And as New Age...
It's very charged, and it has information in it.
I think we're afraid of that emotion.
I think we are, too.
And we're afraid of ourselves sometimes with it. But like you said, it has a lot of information in it. It tells us about ourselves. But if we are angry, then we just need to look behind it. What is it we're angry about? But go ahead and get angry, and then look at it. What is it? It's trying to teach you something. It's trying to tell you something.
And in these sessions, people do get angry.
Yes, absolutely. And then go through it. Go ahead, cry, kick, scream, whatever, do it. And then what is it you're trying to teach me? What do you want me to know? Go on through it.
And that work you all are still doing. Many practitioners that are using your mom's methods are working with this now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I have a message. See, my back went out because I was wearing a pair of new fancy boots that were too tall. So I have a lesson about vanity. Threw that little pinched a nerve over vanity. There's one for you. I'll have to look at that. Okay, no, I brought up before the notion that in many of the people that come in, they go back to lifetimes in ancient times where they were healers of some kind. Now, one theme was guardians of knowledge, people that were there alongside the powerful information bearers, had a life, literally they would put their life on the line to protect that knowledge, that wasn't supposed to be trickled down if people didn't have the ability to understand it and the wisdom within it, right? So that was one thing. Another one was healers. A lot of healers come to you.
Yes.
And so there's a common experience they run into, and it happened a couple times in this book. Let's talk about it.
You mean like the healers where they're afraid to bring that back?
Because that's a lot of us.
Well, they're afraid to bring forth, healers or any of their abilities. They may have other abilities as well.
Yep.
But that's part of it is they were persecuted, they were tortured, they were killed. They had a lot of nasty things happen to them before because of those abilities.
And maybe in repeated lifetimes.
Absolutely. And so, in very, like I said, not so nice ways. Many of us were burned many times.
It burned. Scorching, burning fire comes up repeatedly in this book.
Heads cut off and you name it, we've had it done.
Yeah.
But we're back.
We're back.
So, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
You can only, it doesn't matter. I thought was funny was one of the things as I was preparing, I thought it was funny. One of the best ways that we preserved this knowledge, that I don't know if we even realized it, was we hid it in our DNA.
Talk about that someone talks about that in this book.
Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's in our DNA and in our memory, just because. Because we ever lived it at any time at all.
It's there.
It's there. So there you go.
So what's happening is people are starting to open those doors.
Yeah.
They're starting to remember certain things, and more so, I think we're having urges like, ew, I need to quit my job with the state and start doing Reiki or whatever.
Right.
People are starting to have very strong urges like this.
Right. But back to your other question, that's why some people they were reluctant, or they were like, oh yeah, I have an urge to do this, but I'm afraid, or I what will people think, or what will, it's because maybe
and they're having problems in life because they're stuck, they're not living their truth.
Absolutely. And they really need to do something. And a lot of times that's where they're having the illnesses or things. It's because they've got to move. That's where the body's going. You've got to move in this other direction. You need to get out of this place and you need to move over here. Those are that's the messages. That's just where the body's just trying to tell them.
And a lot of these people that came in because they were having physical problems, and then this lifetime, pre-Atlantis or Atlantis or in ancient times in Europe start surfacing, and that's where they find out that this is what was going on. And part of them has been denying that in their this life, that aspect of themselves. But as you say, it's embedded.
It's embedded.
So that must have been one of the most common themes your mom saw.
Yes.
Was the fear to bring who we are forward.
Yes.
We are in challenging times on a physical level. I mean, things are changing.
Right.
And that might be why all these people who have been living lives as, herbologists and healers and seers and so on in the past are resurfacing at this point in time. It's also why they're getting sick and they're denying themselves.
Right. As you recall, one of the chapters was called Don't Repeat the Same Mistakes.
Yes.
And that is a lot of why they're coming back, is so that we don't do these same things. And so that's part of it, I believe, is so that we can warn ourselves, we can make sure that we don't do these things. And so that could be part of that as well, is help cleanse.
Right.
I mean, when you look at how many, when you look, really the shifting of the consciousness is, part of that is how ecologically
Yes.
conscious we have all gotten. And I know we can do better, but really look at what we've done.
No, think about it. I mean, the big E, we talk about the big C, but the big E is something that since, I think, the 70s or 80s when it first surfaced, everyone was terrified of is, oh my God, what if some horrible disease like Ebola were to poke its ugly head up again? It did. Well, and however it happened, it did. But the point being, it didn't ravage the entire population. It did take lives, but it didn't ravage us.
No.
It didn't spread around the globe like everybody said it would.
Right.
And this is something that is devastating, especially because they didn't understand there were actually rather simple ways to deal with it, and they weren't making them available. But nonetheless, it could have ravaged the planet, but it didn't.
Right.
So maybe this is also some of what Nostradamus was saying, is some of these things will not come to pass now.
Yes.
Because that's something I'd heard years ago too, that there could be something that was devastating to humanity. But so far, it's not happening.
Right. Another thing, boy, and I almost want to clip my wings as I say this.
Okay,
Do
say
I
it
dare?
anyway. Yeah, say it, say it.
There was something I was really, because we're always so concerned about, well, this stuff in the food and this stuff and how do all these things we're so concerned about. And in one of the sessions that I was privy to listening to, the SC part, they were talking
subconscious.
about...
SC is subconscious,
thank you. When it was talking about, it said, you have to understand that as your frequencies raise, you are actually above these things now.
Yes, thank
and
you.
these will not affect you anymore.
Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's a complex thing we're going through as we're changing. I totally agree with that. That the frequency of some of the things that we keep going on about, oh, this will kill you, sausage, it'll kill you. No, not necessarily. But every body is tuned differently and in its different stage of advancement. Because we are moving into a stage where our digestive systems will change because our frequencies change, because our needs for certain kinds of foods change.
Right.
So, I mean, fearing putting everything in our mouth, yet...
Yes. And that is the biggest thing, is fear.
The fear of it.
Fear. And so it's like, that's what, let go of the fear. Just don't fear these things.
Don't fear it. Yet at the same time, things like gluten, our body, it's been manipulated. It has been, I mean, you have a lovely fluffy croissant and it may have had up to 60% gluten added to it to make it light and fluffy.
Right.
Not like the original heirloom wheats, heritage wheats and so forth. So we do have to be aware that, there are some things our bodies just don't dig.
Exactly.
And if you swell up and feel terrible and go to sleep, well, don't eat that food anymore.
Right.
But other than that, there's nothing to fear.
Exactly.
That's a really important message.
I think that's the... Do we dare say that's the biggest message?
Yes.
I think it is.
Fear is the
exactly.
big...
I feel like that's one of my missions on Earth, is to eradicate fear.
Yes.
I just, that to me is biggie. That's major, major. Just stop fear.
Yes, and your mom was big on that too. She said there's nothing to fear, and she had to coax people through all their fear and all these regressions. And I know with me, it wasn't fear so much. She had to coax me through a couple of things. I thought, oh my God, are we on that day? I don't really want to go there, and yet we went there anyway. But it also, and this is something that goes really deep. And my regression with her, a lot of people had these. She wrote about this in Convoluted Universe 1. I was in Convoluted Universe 2. My name was changed to something like Veronica or something. Yeah.
Was your career changed and everything?
No, I think she said it was a television reporter or something like that. But she talked about this experience, and I bring it up because it instilled mass fear in us. That was at the end of the times of Atlantis, which had 3 stages where it went down. And in one of the times I went back to that final day, and I looked at what was going on, what had happened. I had a misunderstanding about why it was coming about. It was natural Earth activity, actually, that had become very unstable. We had advanced technologies at the time to try to ameliorate it.
Right.
Didn't work. And it went on for a very long period of time, and that's in the regression. We'd been working on it for what we would call now generations.
Okay.
We knew it was coming, just keep this energy stable. Beings from other places, there were saucers out. This happened in this book. Someone else recalled the same thing. There were beings from other places who were coming using their energies, trying to stabilize that a part of Atlantis, Atlantea, whichever.
Right.
And ultimately, it didn't work. I happened to drop into the regression on the final day. That was not what I went to your mom for at all. But it seldom is, right?
Is it right?
You know, but when it was over, this was the thing that I came away with, and that was, I kept saying, among many things, I kept saying to her, we have to go to sleep now. And she didn't understand initially.
Yeah.
She said, oh, you're going to sleep now? And I said, no, we're all going to sleep. And I bring it up for this reason. We all have this fear of annihilation on some level. And what happened was so devastating to have such a really lovely, advanced culture. Plenty of everything, people doing what they're here to do, and doing their, and able and having time to do their passions and talents and play. It was lovely. And when it ended in a flash, so to speak, very quickly at the final moment, if we had known what we lost, if we carried that memory forward, we wouldn't be able to continue repopulating. And find ourselves right back to where we are right now, and that's why that information's coming up again. They did use technology interfacing with this. They did the best they could in the time. They just ramped it up a bit. Things blew, but it was natural and it was going to happen anyway. That one of the 3 was going to happen anyway. So I think we need to quit blaming, each other. Oh, bad people, bad ETs, everyone with technology. No, everyone tried to save the thing and save the technology and save what we knew. And so now we have this mass fear of annihilation. Now we buy into end time scenarios because many, many people on this earth went through it. And they have that memory in them. That's not what we're looking at now this time. And isn't that an important part of the story?
Absolutely. And as you said that, and as you're saying the craft roll around, I got the vision. I mean, I've had some regressions as well recently where I've been able to beam out and look on now. And you see all these craft around now.
They're everywhere.
Exactly. They're just like, it's standing room only watching what's going on.
Exactly. It's so true. This is the greatest show in the universe right now, and all that has to happen is for us to drop the fear and just say, oh, okay, we're doing it, And thanks to you and all the people, how many people are now doing your mom's work out there?
Oh, it's over 5,000.
Over 5,000
that we've trained. Yeah.
Fabulous.
And continuing to train.
Do they find everyone through DoloresCannon.com?
DoloresCannon.com.
Okay, and I'll mention that again in a sec. Very good. You know what? It's so lovely to sit with you, and I think that you don't need to fill your mom's shoes. You just have to fill your own.
Thank you.
You're on your way, girl. You guys are doing great work. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you, Regina.
Again, the name of Dolores' newest book is Hidden Sacred Knowledge, to be followed by Convoluted Universe 5. The work lives on with her daughter, Julia. You can go to the site for workshop dates, etc., and to learn how to do this work at DoloresCannon.com. You might also want to go to the Gaia archives and see a couple of my interviews with Dolores as well. Until next time, thank you for joining us here on Gaia TV.
Thank you for watching this incredible episode of Open Minds, only on Gaia. For more incredible interviews like this one, please click the link in the description where you can sign up for a 7-day trial with Gaia.